From New York, Kevin McCullough in the shadow of the World Trade Center Freedom Tower at the corner of Wall Street and Broadway. We are glad to update you from the belly of the news beast each day on what's going on. And today we're taking a look at a Supreme Court case that is being argued today that is finding a very interesting trend, at least in two different states, where governors, through executive orders, said to the taxpayers of their state, if you take any state benefits from us, we have the right to assume that you're an employee, and then we have the right to force you to unionize. And after one mother of a paraplegic in Illinois said, this is crazy, the case has wound its way to the Supreme Court, and they're making those arguments today. Joining us to discuss this is a man who wrote a pretty in-depth piece about it at hotair.com, Mr. Ed Morrissey, who I turn to in some areas of political analysis. He's the very first person I try to read because he has such clarity on these things. And we're taking your calls at 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. But should the Supreme Court rule in favor of these states to have the right to say, hey, we give you the money, we get to classify what happens with it? Ed, where does that argument? I mean, the old argument is follow the money. He who rocks the cradle rules the world. To some degree, if you take money from the state, aren't you subject to what the state wants of you?
Only to the point. Only for what you're using the money for, right? Because if you take unemployment insurance, you have to comply with some requirements about going out and doing job searches or getting job training, or at least producing documentation that you are still unemployed. If you get Medicare, you have to prove that you're a senior citizen or disabled. If you get Medicaid, you have to prove that you aren't that your income level is too low to get health care coverage on your own. Those sorts of things. So yeah, I mean, obviously, we want accountability in public funds. That's what those strings are supposed to provide, though, is accountability. It doesn't. There has never been, prior to these efforts, an attempt to reclassify your employment status based on whether or not you receive state aid. Nobody ever said that the people who get unemployment insurance are working for the state. I mean, very clearly they're not working at all, which is the reason why they're getting unemployment insurance. And if they were being hired by the state, they get paid more than they would have gotten from unemployment benefits. Now, there was, in the 1930s, there was the Works Project Administration, which did hire unemployed people to build bridges and roads and that sort of thing. But that was actually creating jobs, not as a consequence of just receiving the aid. And you hear things like that. In order to get the aid, you have to do, community service or things like that. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't reclassify you against your will as an employee, especially after you've already started getting the funds for that. I mean, this is really an ex post facto change in status that was dropped on these people. And the reason why they're in that position in the first place is because they're actually saving the state a lot of money by not institutionalizing the people that they're caring for. It saves the state a tremendous amount of money to have these people cared for in their homes, and it's good for the patient, it's good for the family. And so now, of course, because they are doing that, they are suddenly now state workers rather than just family members who are caring for their family members. And here's the thing: it's not them that are directly receiving the benefits. It's actually the patient that is receiving the benefits.
Right.
These people are being paid being reimbursed really for their time to care for these people, because it's a lot cheaper to do that and encourages them to stay home and take care of them.
Yeah, it seems so simple. And yet politicians have a way, especially when trying to spend other people's money, of confusing the issues almost every time. 888-589-8840. Let's go to George, who's calling us from Missouri. Hi, George. Welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough and Ed Morrissey. Hi.
Kevin, how you doing today? Thank you for what you're doing. My nephew used to take care of my sister before she died in Illinois, and I think he got minimum wage. And I take care of my wife that has Alzheimer's in Missouri, and I know as soon as you take the carrot for any kind of state organization, and I'm a union person too, but my union is pretty good. I belong to the trades union, and just because they believe in voting all for whatever doesn't mean the people that are in the union, we know who to vote for. We're not stupid, But the point of the whole deal is the more state things you take, the little carrots, is the more you have to give up. So when my wife when she got sick 11 years ago, she lost her last quarter in Social Security, so she had to take regular Social Security, and I am glad that I did it that way. But I still have to fill out a form that explains what happened to all the money. I only write 2 figures. That's it, But the more carrots you take from the state, the more little hoops you got to jump through, and I don't want to jump through any. I'm too old.
Well, and
Anyway,
Ed, that's
comment.
exactly what Ed, what the governors are arguing. We're
Right.
giving you the money to quote a television show. That's what the money's for. They feel ownership of you because there's this connection that you're dependent upon.
Right, and it's the difference between having a benefit program, having an aid program, and hiring them as employees. And there is a large difference between the two. By the way, I want to address one thing that I forgot his name. The gentleman who was
George.
just calling. He's a member of a trade union. That's great. I think people should be free to join trade unions and find work and collectively bargain in the private sector for their work. And if people don't want to do that, they should be free to find work without having to do that. But he values his union membership. Therefore, I think it's great that he's part of that. But with public employee unions, you're not dealing with an owner or a set of owners. You're dealing with politicians who don't represent, who don't have a money interest in tough bargaining. They have a political interest in not being tough. And
Right.
that's what's led to this.
And the other component of that, Ed, is that not only do they not have a money component involved, neither does the union. The money that's on the table that's involved in the component is the taxpayer. So
Right.
what the taxpayer is having to give up to pay in taxes, and then whatever's left over, then they pay in union dues. Whatever benefit they receive back from that, I'm almost assured would not be anywhere near equivalent to whatever benefit they're being promised. At the end of the day, it's better for us not to be dependent upon government in almost any sense, if possible. When my son was going through the worst stages of his disability, I wished, like anything, there was any other way possible to get some of the help that we needed as an adoptive family of him than to go through state programs. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything available. But if I'd had the financial resources to move somewhere else or to go somewhere else to do something entirely in the private sector, I would have done that, simply because I don't want that burden to be attached to the taxpayers' burden that they're already carrying.
Well, let me tell you a little story, Kevin, because I know that you and I have had similar, not identical experiences, but similar experiences. And I know that you know that my wife is a transplant patient. She's had four different transplants over the last 20-something years. And the first 3 of those transplants, 2 kidneys and a pancreas, were handled with the private insurance that I had through my employer. And I know this because it was my employer at the time was a self-insured thing. So all of a sudden I saw this huge expense hit my P&L because I was the director of an area of the company. And I said, where is this expense coming from? They said, this is your wife's surgery, man. Like, oh, never mind. Okay, thank you. Really good. And they were great about it. But the last time we went through this, Medicare was insistent that they had to be primary because it was a transplant situation. And it got to be such a headache that I finally just gave up and said, go ahead, because otherwise nothing was going to get paid. The doctor, the hospital, they were all saying, well, we're going to do the surgery, but we have no idea where the bills are going to go, and you might end up with all of them. And this is a 5 or 6 figure bill that we're talking about. And so I had to let my insurance off the hook, and the taxpayers ended up eating the bill. And it was a huge headache. And that's the type of thing that happens when the government gets involved. They tend to crowd out other other potential ways of dealing with
Solutions.
situations.
Yep, absolutely.
Not that there's never a role for them, but usually you're better off if you're trying to limit that government intervention in these markets. And this, by the
I
way,
certainly would like
shows
to. I wish we could do more. Eileen in Mississippi, you're up next. Hi, Eileen. Welcome. You're on with Ed Morrissey and Calvin McCullough. Glad you're with us. Eileen, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
All right. I just wanted to say that it's a transparent scam. What the unions are doing. Right with this, it's just a transparent scam. It is. It's for them. It's for them to strengthen their coffers. They've got to
just
have
take
money.
just take money right out of people's pockets. Thanks, Eileen. I do wish, Ed, that there was a way that I could come up with some sort of business plan where people just gave me money for no reason. Because it does seem to be
that'd be
pretty
all right.
lucrative. You don't
That'd
have to
be all
produce
right.
anything. You don't have to sell anything. It's just, just here, just give me your money. I think in some places we call that theft. But when a union or government do it, we call it something else, mysteriously.
Well, when government
888
does it, you call it taxes. I don't know what you call it in this case.
888-589-8840. Jeff is in Virginia. Hi, Jeff. Welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
Good. Appreciate you being here.
Great. As somebody who's been a member of a union, I didn't drink the union Kool-Aid, so to speak, but and I was a tradesman member of a union. I don't have a problem with public employees having unions because it's not that. The question isn't whether or not they have an employer who's turning a profit. You have bad managers, and there are people who will take advantage of you all along. So I call it a necessary evil. But in this particular ridiculous case, if I were someone who is accepting state benefits and was forced to join a union, you bet I would take full advantage of my union rights. And I would want to have seniority. I would want to have bidding rights for jobs. I'd want to have all of that big can of worms that I don't think the states really want to get into. Because if you're taking my union dues, then your union has to represent me legally. And I have to get all those benefits that are afforded anybody else who is paying dues into the union.
Ed?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason why I think that the Supreme Court is going to take such a skeptical look at this is because there's no benefit to the employee, and I'm using scare quotes on this, to the employee in this situation because they're not really an employee. They're not getting pension coverage. They're not getting their own health coverage. They're not getting any of that stuff. Not from the union, not from the state. So it's very obviously just a naked cash grab by the state and by the unions. And I think that the Supreme Court's going to look at this and say you can't claim employment when you're offering aid. It just is not the same. There's two very
Well, that's
very,
what we
very
that's what
different
we
things.
hope. That's what we hope they'll come to the decision of. Given the way the Roberts Court went in the aftermath of Obamacare, I've stopped trying to predict what they're going to do. You just can hope that there's going to be a degree of logic and reason behind the decision that they come to. Let's go to Mary in Ohio. Hi, Mary. You're up next with Calvin McCullough and Ed Morrissey. Thanks for being here.
Hi. I agree with the union member and some of the others that have just spoken. There's a lot of things that I had on my mind, but the first thing I thought of was, and our church runs a clothing mission for those that are and have been on anybody that needs it. We see people coming in that have lost their jobs and everything. This is really a bad situation here in Ohio. And I'm wondering, because WIC and the mothers that receive the WIC and other child welfare things, that's part of the state that is given to these children. And if the union is trying to collect dues from people, home health care people and everything that are doing things in their own home, how is this going to be affecting the child labor laws? If you're saying benefits, then it's all benefits or none. So would it include WIC? And who would pay for those children's dues? That's my question.
Yeah, that is interesting. And now, Ed, we don't know, to be fair, we don't know that any subsidies that would be given for children have been used in the two states that we've been talking about. But the principle is pretty clear. How can you say some state subsidies create employment when others don't? Who decides that?
Well, and I think a clearer example is that the state pays doctors to perform medical care for people for kids who are on S-chip, for instance, would be one example, or for Medicaid and that sort of thing. Are the doctors now employees of the state? Do they have to join ASCME or SEIU? I mean, this is, to me, you can almost make an even clearer case if you believe Pat Quinn and Mark Dayton and the rest, for doctors being employees of the state for accepting those funds to perform services. It's the same principle. So doctors might be next.
He's Ed Morrissey. He is the senior editor at hotair.com, maybe the executive editor. Maybe he's the boss. I'm not even sure. I just know he's worth reading, and I read him every day at hotair.com. And Ed, thanks for elucidating this conversation today and helping us wade through some of the bureaucratic mess that is what these governors are trying to do to these home health care situations. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin.
All right, Kevin McCullough, it's AFA Today. More online at afatoday.com. This is AFR Talk, and of course we're with you each weekday where we try to do something very simple. Obliterate confusion, amplify truth, pursue clarity. In this particular situation, let's not unionize people that are caring for their relatives at home because it's just not helping anyone except the unions. Just doesn't make any sense. Brian Fisher and Focal Point are on the way next. Stay with us on AFR Talk. And until next time, we'll see you on AFA Today. I'm Kevin McCullough.